Order. Let our Wizard of Oz get things going. And welcome everyone on behalf of the City Council's Finance Committee and the City Council's Ordinance Committee. This is a precedent-setting evening of two committees. There are two separate meetings that are going to go on simultaneously, meeting at the same time. What that means is we don't vote together. We each have an agenda, but we each have our own items on the agenda. The purpose of this, Councilor Bacon had suggested, I thought it was a good idea, is much of this evening's agenda is dedicated to the wastewater treatment plant and a number of issues, forecasting issues, and where we are, status, especially budget-wise. That we, both committees have a role, so it makes sense to have a meeting together and try to get this rolling. But we also put a couple items on the agenda that are just mostly housekeeping for each committee. So with that in mind, I'm just going to announce and take roll call for the Finance Committee. We are on Zoom, we are live on the Access channel, we are being taped, we are also being streamed. We are not hybrid at the moment, because no member of either committee is on Zoom.
Hallelujah.
So we are just all in person who are going to be here. Finance Committee attendance, Councilor Tallman here, Councilor Powell here, Councilor McGivern here. Councilor Anderson Burgos will be late, and Councilor Jourdain had a prior commitment. So that's the members of the Finance Committee.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order. It being 6:35, Wednesday, June 7th, and I'm Linda Bacon, Chair. We have in chambers with us Councilor Givner, Councilor Rivera, and Councilor Maldonado Velez, and Councilor Jourdain is absent, or excused, I should say. Thank you. So I'd entertain a motion to take up item 1.
Motion to take up item 1.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 1 is an order filed that a handicap sign be placed in front of 16 Center Street for Sylvia Rebello, placard number PL 6020201. I'm advised that our Disabilities Commission has taken a look at this. They have found it to be indicated and they have recommended for approval. So I would like to entertain a motion on this.
For item 1 to be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that order passes 4-0 and will go to council. Thank you.
The Finance Committee will ask for a motion to take up item number 2. Motion made and seconded to take up item number 2. All those in favor? Any opposed? Introduced under my name on behalf of Mayor Garcia. It's a request of transfer. The total transfer amount is $107,700 from Highway Pay HMEO, being requested to transfer into highway overtime $5,000, in-state travel $200, forestry overtime $1,500, trash hazardous waste collection $36,000, trash other services $22,000, property energy for the Pelsier building $22,000, property repair and maintenance same building $15,000, property repair and maintenance senior center $2,000, repair maintenance police station $2,000, repair maintenance central fire station $2,000. The request comes from our Department of Public Works. And off the table for discussion, we have Mr. Rossi with us this evening. Welcome, Carl.
Good evening.
On the 107, I'm taking, we just like to put it on record that the reason there's a surplus in highway pay is a vacancy?
Yeah, vacancies in the
Okay.
department.
And the transfer request is for?
Balancing the line items for the end of the year and whatever extra costs that we think we're going to get in those line items.
Okay. I think if we can just highlight maybe a couple of the highway overtime, what would overtime be with the highway crew?
As far as for the year?
No, what would some of the
that's-
reasons for overtime?
Overtime, for example, last week was Memorial Day weekend, so we picked up garbage on Saturday. So that overtime is for those things or any kind of emergencies that happen during the period.
And the reason I asked is I thought highway was more about the crews that go out on the roads, not the
Yeah, they
trash.
go out on the roads, but they also help out in the trash.
Okay. And I think forestry, we understand, in-state travel. Trash, hazardous waste collection, $36,000. Could you go over that one, please?
Yes, we have waste oil disposal. This is for a hazardous waste day. That was about $22,000. And I just put a little extra to make sure we get through the rest of the year.
And anything unusual about the buildings?
No, they're just whatever maintenance comes up.
Any discussion from the committee? Counselor Dahlman?
Carl, on that trash hazardous waste collection, you said that there is a bill on it now for 22,000?
Yes,
So, you requested 36.
36, 22,000 for that. I have a $3,000 estimate for waste oil disposal that we have already, plus extra that we are forecasting, and just put a little bit more money in there just in case we have any kind of over expenditures on other line items in that budget line item.
Okay, so that's just till,
Just for the end of the year.
End of the year, so it's only a couple more weeks, so. Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because it seems like there was 14,000, and we only have, like 20 days, 25 days left, or left in the month, so any money left in there will turn back into the city, into the general fund? Okay. Thank
Any
you.
further discussion from anyone? Counselor Rivera?
No, that was going to be my question. He just that.
I'll make a
Yeah.
motion to, wait.
All right, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
Motion made and seconded that the committee recommend adoption of this transfer. It will go to our full city council next, I don't even know what today is. Not next Tuesday, but
20th?
2 weeks from yesterday. They kept us up late last night, Carl,
I heard.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item 3.
Motion to take item number 3 off the
Motion made and
table?
seconded, take item 3 off the table. Same transfer request introduced under my name for the mayor. This is $8,000 from that same highway pay HMEO line item into the Elmwood Fire Station, $4,000, and the West Hoyoke Fire Station, $4,000. Under discussion, Carl, you want to just highlight it real quick for us?
Yeah, these are just maintenance and repairs on those two pieces of property at the Elmwood Fire Station and at West Holyoke Fire Station. Mostly it's plumbing, some AC work at the beginning of this spring season, just to cover those and just to cover whatever might come up from now to the end of the year.
Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
Motion made and seconded to approve the transfer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Okay, now we can have some fun. My esteemed colleague, the chair of the Ordinance Committee, and to all the members of the Ordinance and all the members of the Finance Committee, item number 4 is the item that got us here together. So, Councilor Bacon, you want to do the honors?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will read the order that our DPW representatives and our auditor provide a financial review of the Sewer Enterprise Fund for 2023 and anticipated financials for 2024 with a projected impact on the sewer fee to a joint meeting of the Ordinance and Finance Committee. And to put us in proper order, I'll entertain a motion that we take up item 4 from someone.
Motion to take up item 4.
Second. All in favor? Aye. So now we're in proper order.
And on the Finance Committee, ditto. Motion?
The-
Motion to take item
Second.
4 up and join the Ordinance Committee on this adventure. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. Councilor Bacon and I did talk before the meeting. We suggest, we're looking, I think we're going to start, with a presentation, which we understand. We have members of the, we'll get in a minute, we'll introduce everybody. We have members from the commission. We have members, our city engineer. We have our consultant. I believe Mr. Abrams is online. He is. And we have probably a half a dozen orders that relate to some of the topic for tonight or a future topic, but connected to the wastewater treatment plant and to, most important, in one way or the other, connected to the budgets. So some are in ordinance, some are in finance. I defer to all the members and to Councilor Bacon if we just want to kind of read them quickly and just talk about them,
Well,
or just put them out.
I would entertain a motion to take up as a package items 5, 6, and 7 for purposes of discussion, and we can vote on them separately.
Motion to take up items 5, 6, and 7
Second.
Yes.
as a package.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I already read item 4 into the record. Item 5 for ordinance is ordered that the setting of the sewer rate be returned from the city council to the DPW commission where it had been previously determined, that had been tabled in ordinance. Item 6, ordered that in effort to continue strengthening Holyoke's financial foundation, the city council establish a system to ensure user fees associated with enterprise funds such as sewer are maintained at a sustainable level. This system would automatically adjust user fees annually based on budgetary needs and prohibit the use of taxpayers' money to subsidize enterprise funds. And 7, ordered that the Board of Public Works Commission provide an update on the new sewer rate. So that's for ordinance.
The finance would ask that 8, 9, and 10 be taken off the table for discussion.
Should take items number 8, 9, and 10 off the table for discussion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. 8 is introduced by Councilor Jordan, that the Board of Public Works, DPW Director, City Engineer, City Auditor, Treasurer upon the City Council update the City Council Finance Committee regarding sewer, recent sewer breaks and sewer enterprise, the sewer enterprise account itself. 9 is a little bit old, but it was introduced by Councilor Leahy, Lisi, and Tallman. Ordered that with the contract with Suez coming to close in the next few years, that a third-party audit of the facilities, equipped, and every aspect of the contents of that, audit the facilities, equipment, and every aspect of the contents of the contract. And 10 is also a little old. Councilor McGee, who's our president, with then Councilor Lacey, the Finance Committee invites Suez into the, to discuss the budget shortfalls and potential cost savings. These 2 older items, one, we know Mark Abrams has been doing a in-depth look at the contract. So we've actually taken these items up in this committee once or twice, had a discussion and tabled them for future when we're ready to talk about it in depth. I'm not sure how much we're going to get into the contract this evening, but we may want to just kind of like, as we get through this presentation, get through these orders in this meeting, at some point talk about, a future, or Mr. Abrams can talk about, where we are and what needs to be done. I do want to recognize everybody that's here. First and foremost, because he always hides out there, Mayor Garcia has joined us, and we welcome you. Carl Rossi, we've already met, our new superintendent of DPW. Libby Hernandez is a commissioner on the board. Mary Monahan is the chair commissioner of the board. We have our auditor, Tanya Dorjek. We have our engineer, Chris is here. And we have our city treasurer, Rory Casey. The only other person out in the audience is Mike Sullivan, former city councilor, and certainly understands the gist of all these topics. And we welcome you too, Mike. We met the members of both committees. How would we like to proceed?
I have a PowerPoint that we plan to start with a follow-up of the reports that you have in front of you from our auditor, Mark Abrahams. And then after the PowerPoint, followed by Mark, it's open for discussion then.
That sounds like a plan to me. Councilor Bacon?
Sounds fine.
Everybody else okay with that? And I think our Wizard of Oz has Mary in a position to share.
I have it up. Is it up?
Yep.
Can you see it?
We got a battery problem out here, though. Are we not plugged in?
Battery's running low, it says. Hopefully we'll be all right.
It wouldn't usually give you a battery.
I know. All right, Councilor Rivera's going to plug us in.
Battery's running low, it says.
We will not touch that with anything. Okay, we're plugged in. We're good. We're good, Jeff. Thank you. Now,
Okay.
Mary, yours.
So does that mean you're seeing the,
Oh, no, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. We were losing power.
okay. Go to Zoom.
All right, go to Zoom. All right, so share screen, and then this one is it, right?
You will. I won't.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. There it is.
You might want to just hit this little here, that way it's.
Super. Thank you. Aye.
You want to turn this a little bit? Angle?
So we'll get all of the technical stuff out of the way on the title screen.
Yeah, I can see it. Will we be able to?
Yes. Are we ready? Okay, assuming all technical things are in place. So this is tonight a presentation to the joint committees here. It's a review of the in-depth research that's been done to date with available financial data with respect to looking at the funding for the wastewater operations and the proposed sewer rates that come out of those needs. And if I could go to, there we go. So the project team, this wasn't done in isolation. Well, let me start with the agenda. The agenda will introduce the project team. The study summary and recommendations, that'll be a function of myself and Mark Abrahams, followed by his report review, and then it will open up for discussion among the board members. So the project team was led by Mark Abrahams. The Board of Public Works voted to seek outside auditing services as we were trying to identify what an appropriate sewer rate might be based on what the expenses and the revenues were. And there seemed to be some information that was being carried forward that wasn't able to be validated. Financially, we weren't getting a good picture of where we stood, so we reached out to Mark, who's an expert in this field and doing utilities, especially in the Commonwealth, and he's been working with the entire team in making this happen. And that team does include the Board of Public Works. We've stayed very active in this research. The Director of Public Works and the city engineer. We've all participated together on calls that have included the mayor, along with the city auditor and the city treasurer, who were needed in order to supply us the financial data that could be reviewed, and the Hoyoke Water Department. Our billings are done through the Hoyoke Water Department, and it took a little bit of time for the data that our auditor needed in order to get a good idea of who's using our source services to start looking at that individual billing system. There's still work to be done, but we have a better handle and more awareness as to what our user base looks like. And Joe Manzi at the Water Department, we want to say thank you to him for working with us on this. Let's see. Okay, so we'll start with the FY24 annual budget. This is the one that the mayor's office put together, and it also includes our projected deficits for this fiscal year. So you can see what personnel services are. You can see our...
Excuse me, Mary, just for a moment. Is that information in the handout that we have?
I don't know. It should be
Part of
in
it
the
is.
report that you have.
Yeah, the 10,747,000 here, but it's got it
Yeah.
broken out a little differently though.
Right, this is the PowerPoint presentation as opposed to the summary that Mark's going to go over. This is putting everything together concisely, and then he'll develop the background. So the $7,878,000 in the budget includes $7,300,000 for our long-term service agreement. We have debt service to support CSOs and other work at $1,900,000 due this year. We're acknowledging a projected deficit of $777,000. So if you take that deficit and move it into an FY24 need, the total is $10,747,304. Right. As a result of going through these numbers and looking at various scenarios and looking at impacts on users, the demand, we came up with several options. The Board of Public Works reviewed these options on Monday night and heavily favored option one, which you see in front of you right now. You'll see a couple of other options, and again, Mark will follow up with the details of that. So we have our budget, we have our shortfall. We're proposing to recognize and acknowledge the shortfall within the user fees. which requires a total revenue of $10,747,000. That comes up to a FY24 user charge of $8.58 with an estimated average impact for residential users of $15.89. What we learned when we were looking at the residential user billings, the billings are tagged as residential users, even though they could be for dwellings that have up to 4 households in it. So if you just take that raw number with respect to what the average residential user looks like by looking at the total usage by that group of users and dividing it by, you're going to get a skewed number. It's going to skew high because some of those higher bills are because they're paying for 4 households on one bill. So what we did is we looked back on a previous report that had been done by Ty and Bond. They had a number, an average for a residential user, and we also looked at census data, which can also identify what an average residence would use. And those two numbers were close enough that we felt comfortable in identifying that as the usage. So that's $15.89 a quarter, pays off the shortfall, and supports the budget as presented by the mayor.
What is the current rate?
It's $7.50. Option 2, again, the budget is the budget. We still need to address that FY23 shortfall of $700,000 and some change. If we take that $700,000 out of the FY24 user fee and let the council come up with another way of funding it from available funds, you still have an increased rate to $7.88. And that average user impact is $11.50 per quarter. So between option 1 and option 2, we're looking at roughly $12 a year difference with respect to what the user might pay. But as noted, this doesn't address the enterprise fund as being self-sufficient. It brings back that shortfall to the other available funds. Okay. In our research of the sewer rate and who those users are and what they're paying for, I think this is something that the Board of Public Works wanted to make sure was communicated. So what this slide does is it takes actual language from our existing contract for the long-term service agreement and specifically calls out that our service agreement, that annual fee that we pay, supports all of what you see here. Again, language from the contract states collection systems, including sewer pipelines, combined stormwater and sewage pipelines, stormwater pipelines, pump stations, manholes, flood control equipment, and other ancillary equipment to provide uninterrupted and economical flow of wastewater and stormwater through the system. I hate reading something from a slide, but it's important that this is noted. We're paying for the sanitary sewer collection and combined sewer system through the enterprise fund. We're also paying for the stormwater collection system, including the city's Phase 2 stormwater permit and the flood control system through the enterprise fund. So that MS4 support and other activities associated with the stormwater collection system includes catch basin repair and clean out, citywide street sweeping, flood control protection that benefits the entire city, and even the combined sewer, the CSO work that provides water quality benefits that aren't exclusive to just the users of the wastewater treatment plant. So one could say, and if you go to the ordinance, the ordinance is specific to sewer fees supporting the collection and operations at the wastewater treatment plant. These services fall outside of that. So what it also does is if you include these services, which for the past 17 years have been included in the user fee, which supports the enterprise fund, again, back to comparing it to other communities, we're going to skew high because our users are being asked to pay for city operations that don't necessarily fall under other communities' sewer use fee. It goes beyond the traditional collection system and treatment at the wastewater treatment plant.
Can I ask a question?
Sure,
Have those costs been broken out separately somewhere that we can see?
that's the next page.
then my
Not to
timing
break
was
it out.
perfect.
Not to break it out. That needs some additional significant research. So what the Board of Public Works is proposing to do, again, we've addressed financially in those previous slides, what we need to do to get through FY '24 and address that deficit. But moving forward, in order to look at the Sewer Enterprise Fund as being a source of funding to support the collection and treatment of wastewater, we're proposing that a study be funded to actually identify those true costs associated with collection and treatment, and also to further identify and quantify those costs funded by the Sewer Enterprise Fund, MS4, flood control, and there's probably other elements within there that don't necessarily fit the ordinance definition of what the enterprise fund is supposed to pay for. And another issue comes up with this. What you basically have here is with those other citywide activities being paid for from a smaller group of payers, the users of the system, they're actually supporting the benefits that are being realized by those folks not on the wastewater treatment plant system. They're not on that system.
So I would just interject that would be true, except that for years we've been subsidizing the enterprise fund with general tax money.
Well, that's why the reason for the study. Let's get facts.
So
Let's get math.
I know, but I just want
Let's
to
get-
be clear that the ratepayers
Well,
haven't been
and one
supporting
could say then
the
that
fund.
subsidy, even though it didn't mean to do it, it was actually helping to contribute to that street sweeping,
We'll say just
catch
the
basin
facts.
cleanouts and things like that had been occurring. So that subsidy, again, it's not documented through math, but, those services are going citywide that are currently being exclusive to the Sewer Enterprise Fund at the moment. The other thing we're proposing to do in this study is to establish a 5-year capital improvements program. We're well on the way to doing that. There are several things happening right now that's going to identify the needs within the wastewater collection system and at the plant. One of those is an integrated management plan that just kicked off. That's going to do a review of the wastewater collection system and our stormwater collection system.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm listening.
Okay.
Thank you. A lot of this is awesome. Real quick, on that point that Councilor Vacan made, just to be clear, right? Because not everyone is, savvy to what's kind of happening right now on TV, or people that are watching at home. When you're saying some people are paying in and some people are not paying in, can you
So-
clarify on that a little bit?
Sure. So if you're not collected to our collection system, if you live somewhere and you have your own Title V septic system, you do not get a user fee.
Oh, but you still get your street sweep.
You still get your
and all that
street
other
sweeps,
stuff.
you still get the catch basins are maintained, all of that, which is paid for through the enterprise, but you are not sent a sewer bill.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. So that's a good. Thank you
So-
for breaking that down.
So the dialogue is great. And
I just wanted to.
It's fine,
Hold on.
and I will just interject that the people who have septic systems cannot access the sewer system. It is not available to
Oh,
them.
right, and I don't
Okay.
know that was being implied, right, that, so 5-year CIP?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's perfect.
No
No, that
problem.
just- because
Okay, that.
That piece right there
This
kind
is
of like threw me off. a
great
little bit.
conversation, and again, I'm sure it will continue. So again, the integrated management plan, which is just kicking off. In fact, we've got a meeting next week with several department heads to begin identifying the priority rating criteria that we want to use with respect to the city of Hoyoke and our look at infrastructure and infrastructure needs in order to begin to prioritize what do we need to do. So we've got the integrated management plan. We also have a new sewer lining project starting, which is going to identify additional problems within the system because the contractor will be in the system looking at what's going on there. And so it's the potential to identify new issues that need to be addressed. And we also have a draft Nippety's wastewater discharge permit that was issued to the city a couple of months ago. Comments closed on Monday. The city issued a significant number of comments on the program, but over the term of the permit, depending on how EPA responds, there could be some new nitrogen removal requirements at the treatment plant, which will kick in some more capital improvements that might be needed. If not in this immediate permit term, it's definitely going to be addressed in future permit cycles. So when we have all that information, it becomes a bit easier to begin recommending a funding program and strategies. Historically, the DPW has been responding to breaks. There's been no funding to actually plan and prepare for breaks. There's funding out there through grants, through the SRF program and others. When you know what you want to do and you can quantify it, you can go after grant monies to make that happen. So instead of spending money in an emergency situation, which always costs more, we can begin strategizing for that. The integrated management plan includes a public review and a review by the city council, but this proposed sewer enterprise fund study, I would also suggest, include additional public review and comment, because some of it's going to be very specific to the costs associated with the enterprise fund. So that's an ask for tonight, and we can talk with the mayor about it or whatever, but let's get through FY24 with the options that were recommended, option 1 in particular, and then fund this study. So when we get to FY25, everyone has a much clearer picture of who's paying for what, how much does it really cost, and where can the city find additional funding sources in order to help remove that burden from the taxpayer. And with that, this is when I turn, go ahead.
Just gotta, Mary, before we move on, just want to interject one thing and table set maybe two things. And I really don't want to, on the street sweeping, okay, the reason I want to say this is because I actually introduced that many years ago. And our thoughts then was, one, the DPW budget didn't have the funds to support street sweeping. Two, whatever solid waste you took off the streets that didn't end up in the sewers, didn't end up at the wastewater treatment plant, therefore a savings to the operations of the wastewater treatment plant. So there was arguments both ways, even then.
Okay.
But that was one of the reasons we went that way. I'm open. I understand, it's a cost that's not directly related to the wastewater treatment plant. Therefore, we may want to, I think we already discussed this a couple of years ago. I thought we did it.
Sure.
Right, I actually thought we had done it too.
I'll add to that discussion about street sweeping. So street sweeping is specifically required under the city's MS4 stormwater permit. And in addition to your concerns about what could end up in the wastewater treatment plant, it's also meant to help protect local bodies of water. If you don't take it off the streets, the Connecticut River, your local pond, there's waste and there's pollutants that are in that. So it goes beyond just protecting the wastewater treatment plant, but by removing it from the street, it prevents it from going into nearby water bodies.
There's a lot of arguments both ways, and trust me, I'm not even looking to debate it.
No, street sweeping is a valuable
we need to do it,
tool in a
and
community.
we need to figure out the best way to do it.
Yep.
Now, as we go into Mark's presentation, the shortfalls that have been identified, is Mark going to get into that in more depth?
Sure, Mark's.
Because I want to know where the picture was taken in reference to, we know our Treasurer's Department, our Treasurer, Rory Casey, has inherited a system that is way behind in terms of reconciling revenue. We need to take a look at what the payment structure is with the ratepayers, and is that collectibles a high percentage, a low percentage, how we're doing there. I know we took us years to get the water department to cooperate there too, because the billing comes off of the actual water usage, and last I remembered when we checked, they were working close with the DPW on reconciling things like that. And of course we did the shut-off thing that finally they gave into that. Most important, Mark, I'm not going to of just table setting is, I think a lot of people here haven't heard what the mandate is, and what the statute, the law that mandates the Clean Water Air Act, but the whole mandate itself as to why not only do we have to do this, but there are consequences if we don't do it. And I think that's important too, especially people who are out there listening in the world of Holyoke, and to city councilors who may be hearing it for the first time.
Okay, so at this point, I'll turn it over to Mark. I don't know what technically needs to occur to make that happen, but he has a presentation that he'll be sharing. And
Good evening, can you hear me?
we can hear you, yes.
Good. Can the Wizard of Oz give me screen share capabilities?
You should have it.
I think that name is sticking.
I do. Can you see the outline?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it big enough?
Is it big enough for folks?
All right, so
If you can zoom
I'm
in
gonna-
just a little bit more.
A little.
Oh, no.
Mark, can you just
Never mind.
increase a little bit?
You have it here.
yeah, just give me a sec.
Oh, they're all set. They have hard copy.
Never mind, we're all set. I thought it was different from the hard copy that we have. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Abrahams, president of the Abrahams Group. I've been assisting the city and the project team on developing a sewer rate for fiscal '24. We are currently in June of '23. That would be concluding fiscal '23. So we're looking ahead 1 year. I'd like to thank the project team for providing me with a lot of financial data. This outline is basically looking at my tasks for the rate study. So you'll see items in numeric order, and I'll just go through this. I will be supplementing Mary's comments earlier. So number one, over the next fiscal year period, can we clarify the city's rate-setting policy and cost recovery goals? It's not clear, as Mary has said, what the sewer fund should be spending money on and how that should be financed. We talked about several funding sources, the sewer rate, general fund taxation to pay for things like street sweeping, to pay for catch basins and the like, but we don't know the specific dollar amounts associated with each component. So the Board of Public Works is thinking that that should be looked at during fiscal '24 and then be included in the fiscal '25 rate study. Operating revenues should finance operating costs, and that would include long-term debt on capital. And you have a separate line item in the budget with detail on the debt service maturing in fiscal '24 as part of this study. I won't repeat many of the comments that Mary has made, but basically, again, what funding sources should fund what components of the sewer enterprise fund? The city does not have an indirect cost plan to recover costs incurred by the general fund on behalf of the sewer enterprise fund. There are central service costs, Tanya's time, Rory's time, that are borne by the general fund that could be recovered through the sewer user charge. There are also some fringe benefits, insurances, and other line items in the general fund that likely could be recovered through the sewer user fee. So that's another consideration. The sewer user fee does cover the direct enterprise fund costs, salary and wages, operations, and debt service. And you'll see a chart later that sometimes the sewer user charges recover that in full. In others, there are deficits, shortfalls in that particular fiscal year. Operating revenues, sewer user charges, sewer liens, sewer tax titles, penalties and interest earnings on the sewer fund, sewer administrative fees, septic and waste fees, sewer entrance fees. Those are the 8 components of the sewer revenues, direct departmental revenues for sewer. From time to time, there have been transfers from the general fund. There was a transfer recently from the cannabis fund, so that can be considered other financing sources. Other sources may be insurance charge similar to the water fund, ARPA, retained earnings, and grants. The information I'm presenting to you was as of this past Friday, June the 2nd. Very recently, the Department of Revenue has certified fiscal 22 retained earnings. So that becomes a funding source, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. Capital costs include maturing principal and interest on the debt, capital outlay, and that can be financed by general fund taxation, the sewer fund, or other funding sources. As Mary stated, the CSO and MS4 costs, should they be included in the sewer fund? Should they be moved to the general fund? Should there be a stormwater fund in addition to the sewer fund? Should it be funded by sewer user charges, general fund taxation, perhaps introducing a stormwater fee, or some combination of the 3? So these are questions that this study is raising to be looked at over the next 12-month period. As stated, the city does not have a capital improvement plan. There's very little capital included in the fiscal 24 budget. But as Mary said, there are initiatives that have started with a long-term control plan and the integrated management plan. So you have before you the city's fiscal 24 sewer budget as proposed, roughly 9.9 million. There are no indirect costs built into that plan. We're suggesting that fiscal 25. And historically, the budget includes a $7,500 line item for sewer breaks, sewer repairs. This year, it's been increased to $100,000 for fiscal 24, up from $7,500 to address what has been an average of $235,000 in sewer breaks. However, the sewer breaks for this particular fiscal year, 23, through April 2023, is over $700,000. And I'll be getting more specific in a little bit. Sewer receipts. It's been mentioned that Rory has inherited a challenge in his office. Fiscal 23 revenues have been posted as of January of 2023, roughly $5.7 million. The city has collected 58% of the fiscal 23 user charge revenue budget through January, which coincidentally is 58% of the fiscal year. So through January, you are on target to collect your estimated sewer user charge budget for fiscal 23. But we don't know what that will result in by when June 30 gets closed out. Through January 31, the city has collected 5.7 million in sewer revenues, as you see on the following chart. We also did a look back of 5 years, and this chart presents a look back of the revenues collected over the last 5 years. fiscal 18 through fiscal 22. And on the far right, you'll see an average of those 5 years. It's important to note that the 5-year average is what we're using in the fiscal 24 sewer rate projection to give us confidence that the city should realize those revenues in fiscal 24. We also conducted a billing analysis. It was mentioned earlier that the sewer department's reliant on the water department to provide information. And you'll see the usage of sewer flow over the last 3 fiscal years, declining from 1.1 billion gallons down to 1101, a decline of about 2.5%. But our billing analysis is based on the following months. It's a full 12-month period. 3 months are from a different fiscal year, but they're representative of a full fiscal year. Based on that, we can break down residential and non-residential flows and the average user bill, recognizing the skewing that Mary mentioned earlier on the residential side, that it's not typically a single-family home, but there are multiple family units built into the residential. So roughly 8,000 users, 6,500 residential users, 1,500 non-residential users, with the residential users being about 81% of the sewer customers. This chart presents a history of the sewer accounts going back to 2014. So this is around 8 or 9 years worth of data. And you'll see a lot of reds here. On the left side, this is revenue versus expense. And you'll see about half the years, the revenues have not been sufficient to cover the sewer expenditures. So about half of your fiscal years going back 8 or 9 years have seen shortfalls. Many of those years, half of those years, have seen a transfer from the general fund. With respect to sewer user charges specifically, here is the budgeted amount per year. Here is the actual collections per year. And you'll see about half the time the sewer user charges have had a shortfall. And about half the time, the sewer user charges have seen a surplus. And on the far right are appropriations and actual expenditures within those appropriations. And only 2 years did your expenditures exceed your appropriations for that year. So we want to recognize the shortfall. We want to address that shortfall, and keep in mind that the shortfall has been identified through April of 2023. And that shortfall could change. I'm sorry, this is jumping around. DOR expects the city to not estimate revenues more than prior year's receipts, plus receipts related to a rate increase voted by the city, and to provide for any deficit. The 24 user fee could be no more than the 23 actual, plus any rate increase voted that would cover any additional estimate. DOR would need the old rate, the new rate, documentation of the vote, and the effective date of the rate increase. So keep that in mind as we go through the options that I'm going to present shortly. The city should also develop a budget warrant article consistent with DOR guidance for the fiscal 24 budget. So this is going to be a little different for you. In the past, you've been asked to vote a sewer rate. What I'm going to present to you tonight is a sewer balanced budget with expenditures to be funded by specific revenue sources that are in balance. And we could change that, but we have to still maintain a balanced budget between the revenues and the expenditures. So as noted earlier, the current rate is a flat rate, $7.50 per 1,000 gallons of use. Option one. Hold on a sec. I got to move things around here. There we go. The fiscal 24 sewer enterprise fund budget, 9.9 million. The estimated shortfall as of April, 770,000. Total revenue requirement for fiscal 24, 10.7 million. To be funded by, first, non-flow revenues. This is the chart you saw earlier of the average of the last 5 years, a total of $1.2 million. Subtract the 1.2 million from the 10.7, the amount to be recovered from user charges would be 9.4 million. The annual flow, and I'm using 22 flow numbers, is 1.1 million thousands of gallons, results in an $8.58 sewer user charge. What does that cover? It covers A, the fiscal 24 budget as proposed, and B, the shortfall. Let's look at the shortfall in a little more detail. The shortfall consists of two items. The sewer line repairs of $720,650. Chris monitors this frequently and prepares a report monthly. So the May report should be out shortly. But as of April 23, the sewer line repairs was $720,000. Remember, the budget was $7,500. Remember, the average is $235,000. And there was an unpaid bill from Viola from June of 22, that should be 22, of $56,000. Added together, you get the $777,000 of the sewer shortfall. So you get two components here. What do you want to do with the fiscal 24 budget, 9.9 million, and how do you want to fund the estimated fiscal 23 shortfall of $777,000? So option one covers this with a sewer rate to cover both the 24 budget and the shortfall. And if you look below, this is an impact on the annual bills, depending on how much sewer flow you have as a residential customer. The increase would be $1.08 or 14% increase over the current $7.50 bill. And if you're using 45 gallons per day of sewer flow, you'll see that the difference is roughly $43. And if you're using 65 gallons per day, the difference is roughly 63 gallons. Now, that 65 gallons per day per person census calc is very close to the tie and bond number in their recent study, which is 63 gallons per person per day. So this number here is very close. We're using 58,400 in our calculations. So keep that in mind. $63 per year, divide that by 4, you get around $15, $16 per quarter. So as I said earlier, we're going to ask the city council to approve a balanced revenue and expenditure budget, not just to vote a sewer user rate. So here is the proposed language of that budget warrant article. To see if the city will vote and raise and appropriate a transfer from available funds a sum of money to operate the sewer enterprise or to take any other action thereon. Voted, and here is the expenditure budget. Personal services, expenses, debt service, and the prior year deficit, 10.7 million. And that 10.7 million be raised as follows. And you see the same revenue sources presented in this chart. So that's option one, fully recover fiscal 24 and the shortfall through a fiscal 24 flat sewer rate. An alternative would be to recover the shortfall with a general fund subsidy. That could be putting it on the fiscal 24 tax rate. That could be taking from free cash from this year and applying free cash to eliminate the fiscal 23 shortfall during fiscal 23, or from another available fund to do the same. It would reduce the 858 down to 788, which is still an increase over the current $7.50, but the 788 would then be used to fund totally the fiscal 24 budget, and the shortfall would be covered from another funding source. And that option appears on this chart. So we're taking the 777 and we're funding that with a general fund transfer, free cash transfer, other available funds transfer, by getting that off the sewer rate. And at 58,400 gallons of flow, that would be $114.93. And then the budget warrant article follows. That basically was where we were last Friday. And then the city received notification that retained earnings for fiscal 22, the fiscal year ending fiscal 22, was certified by the Bureau of Accounts at $118,126. So that money is available. It is certified and can be voted by the city council up to June 30, at which point the certified retained earnings goes to zero. You don't lose the money, it falls into undesignated retained earnings and then goes through the certification process when Tanya submits a fiscal 23 balance sheet to be viewed by the Department of Revenue in fiscal 24. So you can apply part or all of that 118,126 to A, eliminate the Viola June of 22 old invoice, and B, take the balance and apply that to the rest of the, or in part, to the shortfall. So that's two options, plus a potential third, given the recent development of the certified retained earnings. So what's different? A, the budget warrant article, looking at a balanced revenue and expenditure budget. B, option one, covering the shortfall and the fiscal 24 budget as submitted with a sewer user charge flat rate. Or B, funding the shortfall with another available source and reducing that rate. Mary, I'll turn it back to you.
And in turn, we'll turn it back to the chair.
If I could, just a little housekeeping, ask a question, because I don't know the answer. Quarterly billing, what is the first quarter for the fiscal year? What date?
Okay, it's actually a rotating, so there's bills that are going out every month, but it's, yep.
Great. And Chris, I'll tell you, the reason I'm asking is it makes a difference as to these numbers, as to taking full advantage of the entire fiscal year. We have to hit a certain bill date.
Yeah, I believe the way it's done, so bills go out every month, so it's rotating areas of the city.
Yep.
Okay. So bills go out every month, and the billing cycles rotate. So you get quarterly billings with 3 areas of the city. And so it's billed, the first bills that come in for July go into this fiscal year, even though it is water that was, discharged in the prior. I believe that's how it's done.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So it's kind of safe to say we're not going to meet that deadline
Meet
if
what
we
deadline?
change the rate.
Correct. Yeah, we couldn't change the rate immediately. It wouldn't go into effect July 1st.
Okay. To our auditor, to our treasurer, and to our mayor. Shortfalls. We got some numbers here. You're part of the team. Where are we in terms of reconciling the collectibles, the revenue for the wastewater treatment plant? Is it still January?
So right now we have the cash receipts done until, when did you give them to me? March, April, beginning of April. So I will be reconciling those this week and adding them onto the report. We just finished posting them.
Any noticeable differences, or is it status quo?
It's about status quo, yes. It's a little higher than I anticipated, which is good, but not high enough to cover that deficit, unfortunately.
And Mayor Josh, we've got your budget in front of us. Is there proposals to put a supplemental budget? Or is this the budget we're going to be acting on?
Are we talking about the sewer?
Yes, it's a little different than the city side of the budget.
Right.
We've argued that we don't have line item control, but we do, we do consider it as part of our budget hearings, and we consider it,
Right, but
because it's an enterprise fund, as potential impact on the general fund.
but I'm assuming that you're asking for what my position is and how we handle the sewer budget. Is that what the question is?
I think I said that nicely.
I just want to make sure, because I was like, are we talking about the city budget? And I know it. So my position is, and following this for a long time, and you guys have been around much longer than me, so this isn't new to anybody. This enterprise has to self-fund itself, and subsidizing the enterprise with local appropriation, in my opinion, is not best management practices and inappropriate. And so what I wanted to do in this process, and I appreciate the support of the council that got us Mark Abrams so that we can better understand, because none of us are experts in this area, but we know dollars and cents at minimum, is to understand, it's been a political conversation, often heated debate out there in the community, but to understand what our options are and how we can best appropriate, and the options are not going to be popular ones, but we have to do it. So my position is that we vote on the option that's going to allow this enterprise to self-sustain itself, which will be an increase, and then not have to subsidize in any way, shape, or form using local appropriation.
And Mayor, just if I could, is there any conversation, any dialogue with Congressman Neal or with, state delegations in terms of some revenue relief coming our way?
we've got some support through our federal legislatures on 2 million, mark me if I'm wrong, right? 2 million to support the CSO project. And my conversations with them, whenever anybody reaches out and asks, hey, what do you need? How can we support? First thing I always mention is CSO. So 2 million is not a lot in the grand scheme of it, but I think what I'm trying to do is push getting folks to understand how important this is and the impact it's going to have to this community, and any support that we can get to help supplement that, and also to even help it create a greater conversation within them and other communities that are dealing with this. How can the federal government and our state government step in and help bring resolution to this issue? So the progress, to the extent I've made, was that 2 million, but obviously, that's where it lands at the moment.
No, but that's, any dollar figure is good news. And that has an impact on the bond proposal that you put in front of us, which is not on the table this evening because of open meeting law, but certainly what we're leading towards, because that's going to become part of the debt service and part of the budget itself. So whatever help we can get would be great. The Pioneer Valley, I lost the name.
Planning Commission.
There's a revenue sharing through a Pioneer Valley. Thank you. Is there anything coming this year from them, Chris?
Yes. It's going to reduce from 1.5 million to share between the 3 communities to 1 million this year. So it's usually used.
Microphone?
The wizard has spoken.
Yes, the CRCC funds will be coming our way. We should know in July or August about that. But those are usually used for design services for the CSO because it's in the hundreds of thousands, not the millions. So we're splitting $1 million between the 3 communities, Chicopee, Springfield, and Holyoke.
Okay. And Chris, while you're there, and the mayor, so with that bond proposal coming in, we'll be going into a more detailed analysis of CSO projects on the front burner, back burner, and so forth?
Yep. Yeah, we can go through everything that's planned. That's just for the first phase of the River Terrace project. So I can go through that when that comes up on the next Finance Committee agenda.
Thank you. And now we're going to turn this over to the Ordinance Committee for a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Mayor, and thanks for being here. A couple questions, and I'm talking off the top because this is the first time I'm hearing all this, so. Are you warm to using the retained earnings to lower that $777,000 problem?
So what we have in front of us are options, and that is potentially an option. And I did put an order in front of you to use retained earnings to bring down that deficit. There is an alternate option that actually was made aware to me today that I didn't know we can do, that Mary can speak to a little bit if you want to share, Mary. And when she goes into that, just know with this option, that'll allow us to reserve our retained earnings so that we can continue to use that for ongoing consultant calls as we deal with this contract situation. That's gonna, there's a lot of work we need to do there between now and the next 2.5 years before the contract expires with Veolia. Mary?
Right. So following up with what the mayor said and taking my lessons from our CPA, so the retained earnings, we would want to apply to something between now and June 30th because you use them or lose them and they'll just show up later in free cash. So retained earnings at $118,000, that could definitely be considered to reduce that $777,000. The other option that I believe in an order might have been put in front of you was the sewer stabilization fund that the Board of Public Works has. And the Board of Public Works would adamantly oppose that because that's what's needed in order to support the consulting services moving forward over the next 2 years as we come to the end of that long-term service agreement and begin preparing for the next one. Those of you, and Councilor McGivern, you probably remember it costs a lot when it comes to legal, technical, and financial advice for us to be able to sit across the table with a global player when it comes to making sure the city gets the best contract it can for the next 20 years. So that money is there for that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
So just to follow up, so I'm looking at option 1 and option 2, and I haven't had a chance to read all those 55 transfers that came through last night. So if you're bringing those up tonight, that's all still new news. And I think we have to get that out to the public too. So from my position looking at the other side of the coin, and I totally hear the needs of the department, and I do appreciate the notion of balancing the enterprise fund and having it self-supporting. As Chair McGivern had noted, a number of us thought, actually, that we had already approved moving citywide things like the street sweeping out of the sewer enterprise fund into general fund. I don't even remember when or what process it went through, but that was seen as a citywide service that could, but I don't know how difficult it is to move things out of an enterprise fund into the general fund. And that's a small piece of it. I get that. What I'm sitting here having great difficulty with, while I totally hear the needs of the department, is jacking up the sewer rate for the citizens from $7.50 to this proposed rate under option 1.
$15 a quarter, yes.
I'm sorry?
$15 per quarter.
Or $62 a year. And so when we're talking about things going up, we always say the numbers are small. And we're talking about things going down, we say they're too small to bother with. So I would just say we can't have things both ways. And the citizens have been giving us serious and consistent feedback that they are hurting under these increases. So as contrary as this may sound, being that I think I have a fairly well-established reputation as a fiscal conservative, in this particular instance, I had on the one hand hoped we might through ARPA fund, take off some of the hurt of capital bonding, but that is not where we're going with this. And then secondarily, I guess I would hope, even though free cash, we've been told by our auditors, our outside auditors, should really be treated like a stabilization fund and only used for emergency, I think we need to soften the blow to the ratepayers relative to fixing this fund. And so my initial reaction, and I want to give myself leeway to study it further, but my initial reaction is that we need to soften this for the ratepayers. Because what we all know is happening is with the water rates going up, the water usage went down. With the sewer rates going up, the water usage and the sewer usage went down. We know the infrastructure costs don't change, so it pushes the unit cost up. But I think we need to soften this with the use of retained earnings, with the use of free cash, because you need the money to make sure we do the next contract correctly. But we can't just put this kind of burden, in my opinion, on the taxpayers all at once, in addition to everything else. But that's just my initial take on it for whatever it's worth. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Councilor Rivera.
Thank you. So I have a couple questions around the options and then around like some of the stuff that was presented, right? So like, I think, and this would be, I think for the commission, right, with regards to where service is rendered, right, what we're paying for. That was a good analysis. And for us to have a better understanding of what we're paying for, so that way every line item is paying for itself and we're not running a deficit under the line items. And if we understand that we are running a deficit under the line item, we'd be able to rectify that within due time. But right now, it seems like we don't have a system that is identifying what is paying for what. And because of that, everything is kind of like a bowl of jambalaya, right, or something like that. Like, am I right or am I wrong right now?
So I look at the budget as somewhat simplified. You've got personnel services in there, which again, as you heard Mark talk about, we're only including direct personal services, not the support of other departments.
And that's another piece that should be highlighted too, because it's a cost.
That's, again, that study that we're proposing
that's
is
still a
going to
cost,
bring all that
right.
together. The largest bill is the long-term service agreement, and that's contractually determined. So that will be there for the next 3 years. What we're proposing in that study is to dig a little into that invoice to see how much of that invoice the charges within
Right.
it are associated with those other
So
charges.
every single dollar that I'm paying on my bill is identified to what it's going to. We'd be able to, after the study, we'd be able to
After
identify.
the study, we would have a very
But
clear
right now, we can't
understanding.
do that.
Right now, we can't do that.
So in a sense, it kind of allows for what the situation that we got going on
Correct.
right now.
There are bills that have to be paid. When a sewer breaks, you can't say we don't have the money to fix
Right.
it.
So then the other piece that here I notice is like is it Mark, right?
Mark, yes.
He mentioned that for one line item we had funded $7,500 for sewer pipes, right?
Right.
We average around $235,000. This year we're already at $750. So I guess for me, for question one, and I don't want to increase at all, but I do also believe that it needs to fund itself at the end of the day. Because if we do subsidize it, we'll be back here again, subsidizing it again, and continuously subsidizing it until we figure out what are the underlying issues that are causing for the deficit to continue to run, for them to continue to run at a deficit,
Sure.
more or less. So if I guess my question is, if we were to do option one, right, that means that we're going to fund, we would be funding that sewer line repairs line item at like 7 something.
We're funding the deficit at $700 and something thousand, but we're still only putting $100,000 into sewer breaks anticipated in FY24. So I think the easiest way to when we spoke on Monday night and when we've talked with the auditor, what we're trying to do is address the immediate financial need for the enterprise fund and the deficit, and use FY24 to do that study so that council, the Board of Public Works, the mayor, and the public can get involved in a discussion of what do we want to pay for and make sure it's understood what needs to be paid for.
So option one would not pay for everything?
Option one would pay for everything until we exceeded 100,000 in sewer breaks.
So that 777,000 won't be covered in?
No, that's paid for in that. That's the deficit we have today.
Okay.
And option one would pay for the deficit, and it would fund up to $100,000 in sewer breaks that could occur in FY24.
Moving forward.
Moving forward.
But you'd probably still need more in that budget because we're averaging about
Right.
250.
Hopefully, the capital improvement planning that we're doing will help identify where do we target first to fix so we don't respond to breaks.
So then I guess the other question I have with regards to like knowing what we're paying for. So if we know what we're paying for street sweeping and all the other stuff, would we be able to do certain rates for certain people or certain like situations in the community that are not necessarily covering the costs?
Correct.
So that way the person that's paying into the enterprise fund, right, is necessarily not covering the cost of a person that's not necessarily paying into it.
And that would be one of the options to look at. Mark noted that if we're starting to look at other funding sources, if you get to the MS4 permit, that's estimated to cost a community like Hoyoke anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 annually in order to meet permit compliance. We could look at a stormwater utility fee. It could be as little as, and I don't want to say $10 a month, but it's something that has to be paid for. So I know while Commissioner or Councilor Bacon, these are still things that have to be paid for.
So,
the challenge is in finding who should appropriately pay for them. The other thing we would look at is, are our user fees appropriate when it comes to different dischargers? Are our industrial users who actually cost more to operate the plant, are they paying a fair rate, or are they still paying what a residential user is looking at? These are things that.
But that would come out of the study that's later on down the road,
We'll
and
have
have to
that
make a
debate,
decision
right?
now.
You know, these are, if we have facts and data
Yep.
in front of us, and there's room to have those discussions
Right.
about how do you make this happen, but in the absence of knowing how much of those flows are coming specifically from industrial users, how much of a problem they might be, are we, even our septic fees, I was talking to someone about it, our septic fees could go up, and we could be inviting more disposers there, but I don't know if the plant can handle it, or do we want to handle it? But
Right.
all that comes into that study.
Right.
We're looking for other.
For now, that study won't go into effect on what we're voting on tonight.
Not until FY '25. So
Okay.
we're looking at now to fix what's in front of us, and we're looking at a study to get facts and data so that the city can make a decision about who pays for what, how much is fair.
That makes sense. Thank you.
If we could let Counselor Tomlin go first, and then Carl right after that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of things. I was here when we did the original contract, and I think it was around 2000, 2001. So we got 25. I think it was a 25-year contract with the original. 20-year. Okay, so it ends in what, 3 years? Okay.
Barely.
Okay. Couple of things, and I go along with Councilor Bacon stating that nobody likes to raise taxes or fees or anything. But I know over the years we've been sort of like putting this off. You know, a couple of times for years we hadn't increased the sewer rate, so that's why we got into this deficit. We got in this situation, and water rates are going up, and as they did go up, of course, people try to conserve a little bit more. So then they're using less water. I mean, I get the water report every quarter, the minutes, and there's always less water being used because we also lost a lot of users, you know, big businesses. And you mentioned about the corporations or big users that I think years ago we used to have contracts with. So maybe that's something that in the future we can look at that, how much you charge per, you know, foot or whatever it is per discharge, because there were some companies that were paying a certain fee for 10, 15 years. So there could have been a loss there of them getting money in. You talked about the rates of the breakage, you know, how much it cost this year and how little we had in that fund. And as our infrastructure is aging, those costs could be going up. So it could be that 100,000 might not even cut half or a third of what is going to happen. What happens with that if that does, say, like this next fiscal year goes up to 250, 300,000 and breaks? Who pays for that, and how is that covered?
We're back in front of the council.
Council
saying
again.
We have another deficit.
Yeah. And yeah, because that's
It has to be
important.
paid for.
Oh, it has to be.
Yeah, it's.
And who does that work?
It's contracted, it's through Veolia, it's under their contract.
Okay.
That they project manage it, and, you know, it's a pass-through to us after they have the option, and they work with the city engineer on this. There's 140,000 of repairs and maintenance that they do annually within the contract. And maybe some of these smaller breaks can be used against that 140, but once that number's met, it's back on the city.
It's back in the city.
Yes.
Okay. And the amount that Mr. Abraham stated, the 56,000, that's just for the month that Viola we owe for June.
I don't know what that bill is. That's a bill, I believe when the invoice was submitted, we didn't have enough in the budget in FY '22, so someone made a decision to just pay what was remaining in the budget and move this bill to the next fiscal year.
Okay. And the repairs are 7/20 through April. So is there anything since April as sewer breaks? Chris, would you know?
Yeah, there's about
Mike.
Okay. I gave Mark a projected amount to the end of the year.
Of,
Okay. I gave Mark the projected amount to the end of the fiscal year, so I'm hoping that we're ending up that's the number to June 30.
To June 30th, okay. And, I'm under the impression that this has to be done. I'm not crazy about raising things, and I know it's difficult because we all have different thoughts. I know everybody's costs are going up, not just in food and gas, but, water rates, mortgages, everything. But eventually, we're going to have to say, how are we going to pay for this? And is this the best way to do it? And being an enterprise fund, I believe the users are the where it's got to be paid for. And I know it's difficult, and you break it down, and it may not sound like a lot, $60 a year, but for a lot of people that are struggling to put food on a table or get their meds, it can add up. That extra, $5 or $10 a month can make a difference. And some people that don't really, doesn't affect them, is that an extra coffee or two, when they go to work in the morning. So, but my thought is we really have to look at this seriously and collectively. And I'm glad that we're looking in the future and how we can do this, because putting it off doesn't get us anywhere. And I hate to see it coming from the general fund that we've been doing for a number of years. And I really want to thank Mr. Abrahams to give us some options, because this gives us a better idea of what has to be done. We can't just keep on putting this off. And with all our costs, as he stated, there might be some other revenues out there. There might be grants that we could utilize to help them bring the cost down. But I think it's important that we look at saying that it's tough to do it, but I believe in my thoughts that we should increase it. And I like option one that he put forward to clear out what we owe and to put us into a good financial standing for the next fiscal year. So I appreciate it.
The companies that Councilor Tallman was referring to, it used to be, I think, 5 or 8 of them. I think we're down to just Sunoco, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And that's Sunoco right now. I think the agreement is like a little over $1 million, $1.1 million. Okay.
So I'd like to just note on that, that's an opportunity. We're only operating at 50% capacity at the plant. So from an economic development perspective, to sell that capacity, to let industrial users who need that capacity know that there's a place to go in Holyoke, I think it is an opportunity to start attracting growth.
Mayor, Carl's been very patient. Did you want to trump him or?
No, please, Carl.
The one thing I wanted to say about the $8.58 not increase, but rate setting is that it covers the $758,000 deficit in this fiscal year, also covers the budget with $100,000 in capital expenditures that me and Chris were thinking about to do this year. It doesn't cover any expected emergency for next fiscal year, but if we get through this next fiscal year with minimal amount of emergencies, potentially we'll have a surplus for the following year so we could keep on planning for capital projects, which is very important with our aging infrastructure. You don't want to be caught always fixing emergencies. So this $8.58 rate set is very fiscally responsible, for the sewer department. That's all I have to say.
Go ahead.
I'd like to recognize Counselor Givner.
The only time you're going to trump the mayor.
You trumped the mayor. There you go.
You got the mic.
You got the mic. Hurry up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to note that if our infrastructure costs were the same every year and we'd been keeping up with them, we might be in a better place right now. It seems like we've let a lot of things go over the years that have definitely affected, our city systems in general. So I like to think that by becoming a little more fiscally responsible as a city and passing these costs on to those people who use the services, that we'll get to a point where we plateau, and like Mr. Rossi just mentioned, we'll get to a space where we're not always fixing things or putting Band-Aids on things, that everything's not an emergency. So I really see any investment in our city as a way to get us out of the problems we've had in the past. We're really playing catch up a lot, so it'll be nice to see us get ahead of things and actually plateau to a place where we won't have to raise things, as frequently as we've had to.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yeah, I was just gonna make some general points here. And I recall when I was in front of the council and I said, hey, look, this is an important meeting. You know, we should all, you know, the attempt here that I'm trying to achieve is, and I want to make sure that none of you are in the island alone with dealing with the situation. I know the impact it's going to have, and it doesn't feel good. I'm 150% with you. At the same time, you know, I look at this as a storm, and I'm trying to get our plane through it. And we have here phase 1 to address the immediate. Phase 2, we'll learn later to understand or get us closer to better understand where we are with the situation, so that phase 3, we can again pivot where we need to and then have a much more balanced approach with dealing with this source situation. I know, and I think I appreciate Councilor Bacon's a couple of comments she made, you know, using alternative revenues to cover these. And I think that, you know, those approaches that we've done in the past, although good on the short term, right? I think it's, you know, it's not solving the issue, and the issue is getting bigger and bigger and much more expensive. And I think which brought us to where we are today. And again, like, decisions were made in the past and whatnot, and it's not any one person's fault or whatever the case. Here we are today. We have this consultant here, and we'll continue to evaluate. Mary's been one of my greatest appointments on this to help us further understand this, have an open dialogue, so that, you know, the overseers of this city, which is why I'm bringing this in front of you, why we have different options so you can better understand, so that when I'm making this decision or when we're making this decision, that we're making it together to better navigate the liabilities that can potentially incur. This is like, I told Mary before when we were having these conversations, she calls me, I stop what I'm doing, I immediately pick up, because this is serious. Like, we don't play with these things. When it comes to water and infrastructure, like, this is, and I know you guys all agree, this is very serious stuff we're dealing with. And so we have to be very smart in how we make our decisions proactively so that we can better navigate impact out there, or whatever liability can potentially incur, whether if it's responding to a break or a capital need, or you know, how we're investing in resources and whatnot. Mike Sullivan was also bringing up some points, and hopefully you guys can go out of order and allow him to speak so he can address some things. But, you know, I'm trying to bring a responsible management approach rather than a reactionary approach, so that, again, we can be better on how we're handling this. And I'm more than happy to be the bad guy. You can blame it on the mayor. He wants to increase your rates. I did run a management campaign. I didn't run for mayor to be popular. I ran to try to right-size our ship, and I'm completely okay with accepting that responsibility, just so that we can be sure that, you know, I think, you know, that we're heading in a better direction. And as we continue to explore and leverage alternative resources, you know, I think, you know, by taking available resources through appropriation, so that we're not giving it away to this, and actually tackle some needs of the departments, needs out in the community, it's just going to allow us to better keep up with services. But anyways, through the chair, if it's okay, Mike.
I've got a wait list, with all due respect to my friend Michael. Yes, we will, but not right this second. I'm going to quickly say, Mayor, on your last comment, when I joined the then Board of Aldermen, the president of the Board of Aldermen, Tom Monahan, taught me something very important. The mayor proposes, the Board of Aldermen disposes. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, because we will take you up on it. I got a couple of thoughts, but Councilor Bacon wanted to respond to something.
Yes. Relative to the rate and the health of the department and the self-support of the enterprise fund, I'm warm to those things. However, I want to point something out, that in this budget before us, $100,000 a year are budgeted for repairs. And yet we're sitting here with $720,000 of repairs this year. I would suggest that throws that amount, that unique and unusual amount, throws that into the category of an emergency, where we would properly use our free cash to cover that. It is not anticipated or expected in the budget that I'm looking at that it would generally exceed $100,000. So for it to be 7 times higher, to me, looks like an exception, not something that we would want to set a rate to support. So again, I'm a fiscal conservative, but I do not want to jack up the rate to cover for something that is an exception. I rather support a rate that pays for the averages. I was warm to the arguments in the budget that talk about averages, but this is a great departure from that. And I don't really want to see the rate to support excess revenue in the enterprise fund either. And so my question is, and my take on what I've seen so far is, absent the unusually high breaks and absent the failure to pay a bill from the previous year, the enterprise fund is self-supporting with the user fee this year, right now. Is that correct? Am I analyzing this correctly?
No, because there was only 7,500 for breaks in the current fiscal year for the budget. So
Okay.
And again,
So we're in a deficit because of that limit.
right. So what's happened?
No matter what.
To what Councillor Tallman has noted, that rates weren't increased as requested. So it looks like when you look at the budget, what happened was the folks then made a decision, we have to cut something now to meet the rate. So that was the one item that we can just, everything else you have to pay. The other one becomes an emergency, so that's how we got down with $7,500
On the
sewer
capital
budget. Yeah.
Okay, and I would note that under the repairs, the 140,000 is a rate that's been in there apparently since the beginning of the contract.
It's intended, though, to support items that have been planned for. Again, it was intended to support capital planning, not be
The
funding-
140,000 for repairs?
140,000 that is in the, you're talking about the contract for the long-term service agreement?
I'm talking about whatever fund it is when I call Veolia that they tell me it's all used up for the year.
Yes. 'Cause if you read the...
You can tell me which one it is. Every year I call them, it's the same answer.
It was intended to be a capital planning fund. It was intended to actually work a schedule of projects. Because there were so many breaks, that you have to almost throw that, well, we're not going to fix this over here because it doesn't need to be fixed, but over here we now have a break.
Right.
So it hasn't been treated as it was intended to.
Right, so I have a request, I have my comment and I have my request, because based on what I'm hearing, it sounds to me like the $100,000 is low.
It is.
Going forward, that's low. But on the other hand, we can cure the emergency repairs of 700,000, which were extreme, which would be a reasonable use of free cash, in my opinion. And then it would soften the rate increase, which would then support the users, because you no longer have an old bill outstanding, and you hope that you won't have 700,000 more.
And would
in
you agree
repairs.
to increasing then the sewer break then to the 235?
I'm sorry?
Would you then agree to the FY24 budget, instead of the 100,000, we'd bring up that budget to the average, 235,000?
Well, I don't know what the average was, but I'm warm to option 2, I guess, in general.
Okay.
But I'm just noting that if something is 2 or 3 times above the average, or 3 or 4 times above the average, that kicks it into the cubby of an emergency because it's unexpected. That is an appropriate use of free cash per our auditor. And that's what I would advocate for, to end up with a more reasonable rate for the users. But that's my take. Thank you. I'll defer to Councilor Givner.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Givern.
Finance is taking over for a second here. Just a couple thoughts. One, Mayor, wholeheartedly agree with you, and it has been my position, will continue to be my position. The wastewater treatment plant, this budget has to be self-sustained user rate self-sustain through a number of other options, not the general fund. I'm not opposed to some help, one time and things that, are isolated, but not on an ongoing basis. And most important, as we start approaching, and one of the problems with, I like what Councilor Givner said, but one of the problems is, and I'll use Councilor Bacon's term, there's an elephant in the hallway called CSO projects that have to be taken care of. And we got a proposal coming before us, and we're going to get more detailed as to when some of those projects down the road are going to start kicking in. More important, when we borrow, if we bond, when we have to start paying that back, because that then
That'll
becomes
hit the
part
rate.
of this budget and certainly can have an impact on the rate in the future year, if not immediate, but somewhere down the road. I will, because I think right now, this is not the place to discuss item number 5, which is returning the rate setting to the Board of Commissioners. I don't think that's going to happen overnight, but we may want to discuss it. But I will file an order, it will be generic, to review the rate of the rate itself through the ordinance. And that's a process that goes through the ordinance committee, but that'll, at least it'll start the discussion. Anybody who wants to co-sign with me is welcome to, but I don't mind taking the heat on that one because, as I stated, somewhere down the road, we have to reflect the revenue to the costs and the operations. The Finance Committee will be meeting immediately on some of those transfers that Mayor Garcia has proposed, and we'll take up an initial discussion on the bond so we can start talking about CSO projects and the impact there. And I think that's the two most important things I wanted to say. I understand timing is everything, and it's tight, and we'll do whatever we can, to work with the mayor, to work with the board and the department on trying to push something forward that makes sense, into a upcoming billing cycle. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough to do quickly. With that in mind, do we have other discussion?
I would just say that I'll sign on if you write it generally.
General.
Put me on it.
Well, numbers can be amended, and it's not that I'm against and I'm absorbing
I'm
option
just
1,
saying.
option 2 and what we're doing. But there's other things to think about. Councilor Tomlin?
Yeah, just, I think Mr. Abrams talked about something too earlier, which makes a lot of sense, is based on each year and the usage, would there be like a rate, like a floating rate? I don't know who would answer that, Mary, where if it goes up a little bit, it'll go up, 10 cents, whatever per year, or would it stay there, where it would be automatic, wouldn't have to do it every, say, 5 years?
Our intent as the board is to continue the relationship with Mr. Abrahams every year, just like the water department has an auditor every year that assists them, and come up with a longer term rate that doesn't require this annual, what's going to happen now. So that is our intent,
Okay.
is to get something more stable, but we got to get through that FY24 study.
Yeah, I think that's important. And one of the orders in here talking about giving it back, is that something that's talked about, Counselor, about them making the increase, or is it still within the council?
It's in order.
It's an ordinance.
It's an ordinance. Oh, because that's a possibility to leave that to the
Yeah, that's-
commissioners.
It's on the agenda this evening.
Right, right.
Not only because it's part of the whole, the broader issues, but not necessarily to talk about tonight.
So that'll be something that'll come up later on.
Yes, I put it because I thought it would come, I put it on the agenda because I thought it had bearing within the whole context that we're talking about here. I think we can't really have the debate that the committee would have in this context, but we can keep it tabled in committee, which is where it's been. And if the rate request comes over, those discussions can go hand in hand, in my view.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. And a last comment I have to say, and early on, and it could have been 14, 15 years ago, I actually got a tour when it was, I believe, Aquarian. So if Viola can be contacted, or through the Board of Public Works, especially a lot of new counselors, to possibly set up a date to go down there, to get a hands-on look at it. And even myself, I know things have changed over the years. They've had improvements down there. To get like a 1-hour tour of the treatment plant, I think would be excellent, especially for the newer counselors.
I'm sure that they would totally enjoy hosting you. They do a great job in educating anyone who wants to see the operation.
And I
what
think
it's all
that'd be,
about.
Very interesting.
yeah, I think it would be. And like I said, I've done it, it might have been 12, 14 years ago that it was very interesting to see that. And for us to get a better hold on what's actually done down there would be really beneficial.
Just note that Councilor Tessa Murphy-Ramboletti has joined us on Zoom. So we got some work to do. I want to thank everybody for the presentation. I just want to say I will file the order on changing the ordinance, but my name is still on returning the rate setting to the Board of the BPW, the commissioners themselves, because I think this is one of the strongest boards we've had at the DPW in a long time. And that's no disrespect to prior board members, but I think it's a very active board, and we appreciate that. But regardless, I don't think that we have. I think we should not stop the discussion debate. I think we should keep it going forward. I know the finance committee will keep going forward. Is there other discussion, questions?
I just want to also note that I appreciate the presentation, and I look forward to robust discussion. And I would seek a motion from my committee to table item 5, if I could, if that's a good time for that.
Motion to table item 5?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then on items 4, 6, and 7, I believe it would be appropriate to consider them complied with at this point.
Motion that items 4, 6, and 7 are complied with?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Thank
because
you.
item 4 is joint, I would suggest to the finance members, item 4 is also complied with the finance committee. We won't be having a joint meeting again. We'll
Right.
meet, but it'll be separate on our different tasks that we're responsible for. That item, on finance, item 9 and 10, the older orders are also now complied with. So it'll be 4, 9, and 10.
4, 9. Items 4, 9, and 10 from the finance committee have been complied with.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And I suggest that we keep Councilor Jordan's order, item number 8 on the board, on the table, and I'll go more hand in hand with the bond proposal that's in front of us, because it deals with the sewer breaks and things that are going on out there that need attention. So if we could just table item 8.
Motion to table item number 8.
Motion made, second to table item number 8. Is there any other discussion on these items? Thank you. We have a little bit of housekeeping.
So
Oh,
hearing.
you guys can,
Hearing none, I would like to entertain a motion from ordinance committee to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Real quick, I do want a motion to adjourn, but it's just, I heard earlier the mayor suggest we suspend the rules for former Councilor Sullivan to add
Oh,
comments.
oh,
I don't know.
good reminder.
Good point.
If we want to do that, or we
I'm
just want to
open
adjourn.
to
Suspend the rules and let,
I think all committees have always suspended the rules to allow anybody
Like
from the
Sullivan?
public
Okay,
So
to
you-
speak.
okay.
So,
Michael?
So Mike, you have the mic.
Got you, Mike.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Mike Sullivan, 43.
Is it on?
Oh,
Chris, can you show them how to turn it?
I thought it was on.
There you go. Now it is. Okay. We got to get close to that.
All right. So, the last year and a half, I've worked with Mayor Garcia on the infrastructure committee here. One thing I want to stress with the committee, it's not just the current rate and the impact of possibly $60 on a household. What you're really facing here also is, some other things that you really got to start taking into consideration now. And this is what's coming down the pipeline. The federal regulations are only getting stricter. The state regulations are only getting stricter. What you're facing right now is going to get worse. And what we're facing with climate change could be enough to overwhelm the system, no matter what we do right now. So it's got to get a lot more proactive, and that's going to cost money. And the infrastructure costs that were true a few years ago have only increased, and they're going to continue to increase beyond what you're looking at now and today. All right? And throw in on top of that what we're working on now. We don't know what's going to come in as we develop an RFP for what's going to happen. What is the cost of the system going to be 2 years from now? Also, if you think it's going to be the same as it's been for the last 20 years, I got news for you. All right? So when we talk about just using some other funds or some other available things now, you got to get ahead of this and get a rate that's, I got to say, more than break even. And maybe it shows a surplus that can be used to address some of these future things and get ahead of these changes that are coming our way. Thank you.
It's a good point. And as we get into the discussion about changing rates wherever it is, there is a cap, though, on how much of a surplus you can generate. And that's because of the status of the user fee and the enterprise fund itself. Want to get out of here?
You want to go?
Finance, hold on.
Does somebody want to renew their motion?
So for us, motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.
And real quick, we just some housekeeping for finance. Item number 11, if we take it off the table.
Motion up item number 11 off the table for discussion.
Introduced by Councilor Anderson Burgos, DPW Superintendent, provide a city council update on tree list. Update should include how trees are prioritized and the obstacles the DPW faces addressing them. I'm handed a list that came from John Tuig. It was dated last Friday, so I'm guessing it went to Carl, I think. But Carl, is this the list that's being provided to us?
Correct. That's all the trees that have been taken down since we had the contractor come in about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So he took down about 20% of the trees that were on the list in a matter of a week and a half. And he's not here this week, the contractor, but he'll start again next week.
Okay.
So
I believe we have a request for transfer to up the line item for the contractor before
Yes.
finance, so we'll be talking about that next week. Councilor Anderson Burgos?
Yeah, a lot of my constituents have been reaching out regarding trees that have been falling or look about to fall. And so the concern is, safety. And that's why I wanted to get a list so we can see where we're at and how we can fund to have these trees that are rotting removed.
Yes, I have.
And I should mention, a tree did fall on my house after I had called plenty of times. Well, that's why I don't want that to happen to another constituent. It's a horrible experience.
So we do have a list I just supplied the list of trees that have been removed. What I could do tomorrow is email you a list or email Councilor Givens a list that we have as far as trees that we know that are dead that need to be taken down as part of this contract. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
And of course, the age-old question too is we have to identify if it's a tree responsible of the city, or if it's on private property when the city cannot touch it, unless it's near wires like the gas and electric and so forth. Do you feel this order's been complied with?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, but I want a copy of that list.
Okay, that's being done right now.
I'll send it to you.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Well, we have it. We've got the list. We'll make sure everybody's got a copy.
Motion that.
Carl, did you want to say something?
No, Councilor.
Councilor Rivera.
Since I'm here, right?
I know, you guys adjourned though, we're working.
Yeah, I'm working too, man. So just on the tree topic real quick, I have a constituent in Ward 3 that asked me about one of the city trees that the roots are actually destroying the foundation of his house. Do I file a separate order? Do I make a phone call and we spoke? He's here right now. It's a tree topic.
Email it to me.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, that's the best way because then I'll disseminate it to the proper department, my proper departments, and I'll get back to you.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other discussion on trees? No? There always is. There always is.
Motion that item
Thank God for John Tuig.
11's been complied with.
Motion made second that item number 11's been complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carl, if you can help me real quick, we've got items 12, 13, and 14. I thought Councilor Bartley was going to make it this evening, but I know he had a family commitment come up kind of sudden. But I think two of these, if not all three of them, have been complied with. Has the sidewalk on Queen Street between Coit and King Street been replaced, repaired? Chris, even better?
So that's on the list. It's just not CDBG eligible. So we're looking for alternative funding sources, probably city funding.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, can you find some funds for this?
So when it comes to sidewalks, and I know the city engineer has been trying to find some method to appropriately address or assess the conditions in need so that we're not just picking sidewalks because it has the most advocates or whatnot, in neighborhoods or whatever the case. We really need to be adequate in how we address this and not because it has the most active counselor in getting sidewalks done. So that's the long answer. The short answer is currently I have no funding, and nor would I until I have a decent plan that we can tackle to address these issues. I know the engineer does have some sidewalk projects coming up in accordance to the plan that he's been able to put together on the interim until we have a much more sophisticated system to appropriately assess conditions and help us determine what the priority sidewalks are going to be.
Okay, and I do know the Ward 3 counselor walked with the superintendent, and I'm pretty sure you did review this street. And being not just a at-large city councilor, but a resident of Ward 3, this has been on the list for a long time. So why don't we just leave item 12 on the table?
Motion on item 12 be tabled.
All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. 13 and 14, Carl, probably more Chris, West Glen Street. All that's been done, right?
Up on the top? Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't think so. 'Cause I know David told me, and I remember walking it with them. I couldn't believe that little section there and
Yeah.
the problems it was
There's
causing.
a lot of problems with that.
But I'm pretty sure it's all set. If not, we can catch up to it. But suggest that 13 and 14 have been complied with.
Motion at 13 and 14 comply with?
Second.
One more item. All those in favor?
Aye.
The last item is not for this evening, but just to get an idea, when would be a good time for someone to tell us what's going on with parking downtown. This is filed by Councilor Jordan, that the superintendent please provide the city council or parking committee the following report. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we're looking for numbers. I know there's a advisory committee that's been reactivated. And the last I counted, we got more meters down than we have meters operating.
Yep.
And I don't see any monies being collected at the two parking decks.
Yep. So this body has supported appropriation to fund a parking study, which would result in key recommendations on how we can proceed forward to rethink our parking management system downtown and where we're going to prioritize resources to improve the very points you just raised. There's a committee. It was a little slow, but the update where we are now is that we just secured a contract with a vendor, with a consultant that's going to work with the committee to do that evaluation. It won't be done within this fiscal year because I think the contract was just signed a few weeks ago. We are going to encumber that money you appropriated so that we can continue to follow through with implementation of that project. The reason why it was a little slow is the committee finally met for the first time I want to say around December or January. For the first 2 or 3 months, it was a little, normally when you put together committees together and there's no technical assistance with it, it was a little, round table getting anywhere. And so that's when procurement started working with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. At the same time, we didn't have a procurement officer. We were in the middle of searching for one, so we consulted with PVPC to help facilitate that process to then get us a contract in front of me that I can sign with a vendor that can appropriately offer the technical assistance they need to help better evaluate the management system. So it's not it's not as black and white as what people think when you think downtown. If you Google parking management studies in Massachusetts, you'll see very well thought out to the science of how management parking is concerned. So once we get that final product from that committee, I'll have a report in front of you, including some requests and how we streamline resources to better handle our management of parking downtown. So that's where it is. It's a little slow.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak for Councilor Jordan because we'd be here all night.
I can call him.
I will say for Councilor McGivern, long-term, that's acceptable, and I commend you for that. I was on one of the original committees that designed a plan for the entire downtown sector, and I understand the issues. I understand issues change. Short-term,
Yep.
we have a depth service for saving Suffolk Street, which I think was the most important thing to do for the future of parking options downtown, especially when a lot of good things happen. And we still owe some money on Dwight Street. Short term, what can we do to enhance the revenue coming in?
So
We need daily parking on Dwight Street. And you talk to the director of the Children's Museum, the Volleyball Hall of Fame, you talk to anybody that has a restaurant, that has a store on High Street, just going over towards the river, there's no options to park, for an hour, for 2 hours. We need something collecting money on Suffolk Street because it's a free-for-all. Yeah. Both up and down is only for monthly.
So there's two points I want to raise. One, our revenues are pretty strong that we're collecting just in, parking tickets. And so, I don't want to say like 300,000 more or less. And we can do better, not just by tickets, but also, to your point, collecting revenue at the garages. And so what I can potentially do is I can work with, I'll work with Carl and our procurement officer. I've thought about this. The reason why I haven't done anything is because I knew this study was happening. And so I didn't want to do I didn't want to implement a short-sighted idea that later is going to be changed again. But if it's that important, I have thought about potentially procuring kind of like what we had before, a contract of some sort with somebody to manage those garages. We can wait another 3 months or so, 4 months for this report to come in front of us and pull the trigger there on what we want to implement.
I think we can do both. I think we can enhance revenue. I didn't even mention, trying to get as many parking meters working as possible.
Yep.
But we used to bring in close to $500,000. That's exaggerating.
Yeah.
About $350,000, $400,000 a year in parking receipts when all the meters were running and when both decks were being used the way they were designed to be used. I'd rather bring in that type of money through a parking receipt than through a ticket because someone can't find a place to park and they get a $20 ticket.
I'm with it, and it's confusing too. That's the other thing that frustrates me about downtown parking. But there's that idea with the garages, and there's also putting up redirecting meters to the lower end of Dwight Street there as a potential to start collecting some revenue. There's a lot of parking happening there that's not being paid for.
Oh, yeah.
You raised a very good point. Nothing that I didn't already think of. I just put it on the back burner knowing this study committee was happening, but I'll work with Carl and the Board of Commissioners here and see what ideas we can do in the short term to collect some revenue and make sense out of it all until we get a longer term plan.
Thank you.
I'll put it on the list.
Any further discussion on parking? Councilor Maldonado Velez.
Thank you, Mr. McGivern. As Councilor McGivern, as one of the council representatives on that committee, it has been a little slow. I'll be honest. I agree with the mayor. I think it's slower than a lot of people involved in the committee are involved in a lot of different things. I'm with it with Councilor Bartley as well. Right now, where we're at with McMahon company, that's the one that's going to be doing the study. Part of the study is going to be involving public comment, also these public meetings. So expect to be reached out as a council in the next couple months to be part of the study. I think part of the conversation we've been having, we have parking meters, but we also have one person that literally is dedicated every day in their shift to fix the parking meters because it's an antiquated system and a lot of times. So part of the question is, are we going to bring it all electronic? Are we, so we're just hoping to get a lot of those answers with the study, and hopefully a lot of what you're thinking, a lot of your feedback will also be brought into this study as well. So yes, it is slow, but we're hoping that we will have downtown parking clarity within the next couple months. So
Appreciate it. And just, I'm sure you guys, I threw everybody's thought about it, but originally, and it's not the same as it used to be with the Chamber of Commerce, Greater Hoyoke Inc., other downtown associations representing the merchants and landlords all got together as part of this, not just, public speak out, but as part of offering ideas and solutions. Mayor?
Sure. A couple of clarifications. We do charge for the parking garage. No one's parking for free. And our parking guy goes in there and tickets anybody that there's
supposed to be a daily rate on Dwight Street. It's all monthly.
Monthly, yeah.
There is. So there is no even. It's through a mobile app.
It's
and
through the app.
Anyone that doesn't do it, they get ticketed. But just to let you know,
That's how I got
240,000 have been collected up to January in total. 140 of that is from that garage, and I think we have a contract with Health Center.
Yep.
$15,000 or something, so their employees can park. So people are parking to pay in that garage. It's no free.
I understand the monthly stuff. I do.
Yeah.
I've done both. And I understand how. And I understand with the health center.
No, it's not monthly. If you're visiting City Hall or whatever and you park in that garage.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're.
Well, Chris? Is that recent?
No, it's been
because there was years where when the gates and the cash boxes got broken into, they stopped the daily parking on Dwight Street because that's when the management company went away. There was no one collecting.
So since we got this wonderful guy. His name is Carlos. He doesn't let any free parking happen downtown, and I'm sure you've gotten calls.
Hey, I've got tickets.
Carlos goes into that garage. If you don't pay, he's giving you a ticket.
Oh.
So there was a time, you're right, in that history and transition and whatnot. But since they've hired Carlos, there was one other person, that person no longer works for the city. He was by himself. We just hired a second guy. So Carlos and another gentleman, they're going around ticketing. No one's getting a free ride right now as we speak. But to your point, though, there's still more we can do. It is a little confusing. Folks call my office, and we try to help folks. But we do have this committee, so things are moving. We're certainly not ignoring it. That's for sure.
And I have no problem with the app, but I love that generation. Where
I know.
I like the machine where you put the dollar bills in it.
Yeah.
Mr.
Okay, I stand corrected. If we do have daily parking, at least an option, that's good.
No,
All
we
right.
do, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna say, so we do. Mayor is correct. They do the daily parking. I think it goes back to the problem. Sometimes Carlos can't be out there because he's fixing the meters that are being tampered with. So that's like part of the conversation. Is it going to be all electronic? We talked, the generational gap. Like, yeah, maybe people just want to use the quarters or whatnot, but that's going to be all part of the study and part of, we'll get answers for. So.
And we had some experimental meters right up here by the old Hoyle Compass when that was open.
Yeah.
That were interesting because not only could you use the app on the meter, if you drove away, the next person didn't get what was left on the meter. It started back to zero.
Started zero, yeah, which is good.
And even,
yeah.
That's a mean meter, is he?
and even the electronic ones, they have problems with. So we'll figure it out.
I can make a motion to table item number 15.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Let's do what the ordinance committee did.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Good discussion.